Myanmar's military rulers stand by their decision to execute 4 democracy activists, justifying the punishment as deserved, even as global condemnation grows. Staying with that story and to give us a greater understanding of the crisis unfolding in Myanmar, we are joined by Connelly, Senior Fellow for Southeast Asian Politics and Foreign Policy at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. Aaron, first, what do you make of the military government's response to those executions?
I think many assumed that the military had handed down these death sentences as a kind of bargaining chip with ASEAN. Hun Sen, the Prime Minister of Cambodia, made a personal appeal to Min Aung Hlaing, who has styled himself as Prime Minister in Myanmar, to stop these executions. And I think they believed that they were going to get that from the military. So the fact that they went forward with these executions is a real slap in the face to Prime Minister Hun Sen, to ASEAN. It doesn't appear that it was a bargaining chip. It appears to have been a very serious effort by the military to deter others from joining what they call a revolution against the military government.
Yeah, so also a message to the people. You mentioned ASEAN there. Last year, you wrote that ASEAN's rebuke of the military government by disallowing them to attend the summit actually mattered. That response mattered. Do you still hold that view today? And how will this latest development affect ASEAN's interactions with Myanmar?
I think it's clear that Min Aung Hlaing, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, values international legitimacy on some level. It may not be the most important thing in his mind. That's probably maintaining control of the state or trying to extend control of the state and extend control of the country since his coup d'etat. But he seems to value it on some level. And so when he went to Jakarta to meet with the other ASEAN leaders, he then replayed footage of that on state TV for weeks after it happened. So it does seem to matter to him on some level, but it's probably not his most important priority. I would expect to see in the coming 2 weeks, ASEAN has a number of very important meetings scheduled in Phnom Penh next week. I would expect to see ASEAN extend the measures that it took last year when it uninvited Min Aung Hlaing from its leaders' meetings, then uninvited the foreign minister from its foreign ministers' meetings in January. I would expect to see that extended to other junta officials in the coming weeks, and possibly representing a kind of de facto suspension of the military government from ASEAN meetings going forward.
Right. There's also been an international outcry. And earlier in the bulletin, we talked about the U.S. saying that it just cannot be business as usual with Myanmar. So I suppose the thinking behind that is that perhaps the full force of economic sanctions and diplomatic pressures haven't been applied to Myanmar. What else do you think can be done?
Well, the biggest tool in the United States toolkit, and for that matter, the European Union and the UK's toolkit, would be secondary sanctions. So sanctions on those who do business with the military government. And those would in particular target Thailand, which gets most of its gas to power its electricity from Myanmar. They've been very reluctant to take that step. Sanctions short of that aren't going to be particularly effective. And so it's not clear what steps the international community is going to take next because they don't want to touch that most valuable tool in their toolkit for fear of offending Thailand or destabilizing the Thai economy, especially given that Thailand is a United States treaty ally.
There is some thought that perhaps China could, be able to wield some influence here in changing the trajectory of this ship. Do you think that they are likely to step in and play a role?
Well, who knows what sort of surprises might come out of Beijing. It's possible. They had a very good relationship with Aung San Suu Kyi's government. And I think we're not actually very pleased by the coup d'etat last year and made that displeasure known in their own way. But since that time, they've become much closer to the junta. They've invited the foreign minister to China. They've made visits to Myanmar, hosted by the junta. And so they seem to have reconciled themselves to the fact that, or to their perception that the military government is going to stick around. And so they don't seem to be making any moves to put pressure on the junta or anything like that that might force them to recalculate.
Malaysia has come up with the statement today saying that, it actually wants to open lines with the shadow government. Is that likely to be taken up by Myanmar?
Well, Malaysia's foreign minister, Dato Sri Saifuddin Abdullah, has met with the National Unity Government. He did that in Washington on the sidelines of ASEAN's meeting with the United States in May. A couple of other governments, foreign ministries, have met with National Unity Government from within ASEAN, at least according to CNA's reporting. And so it's possible that others within ASEAN will more openly meet with the NUG. Maybe more members will meet with them privately, but it's going to be very difficult to convince all 9 ASEAN member states, excepting Myanmar, to accept the National Unity Government as the legitimate government of Myanmar. I think Thailand in particular would really struggle with that decision. And so I think it's unlikely that the bloc will do that, but individual members might.
I always appreciate your thoughts there, Aaron Connelly, Senior Fellow for Southeast Asian Politics and Foreign Policy at the International Institute for Strategic Studies.